Welcome to Fantasia, home the Melodious. My name's Azallea, and today, gonna be bringing you guys another update to my Melodious deck. Now, of course, this update is going to be in accordance with the new June 2017 emergency ban list, where cards like Elder Entity, Norden, and such got hit. So without any further ado, let's just jump right into this. Starting off, we play one copy of Aria, the Melodious Diva. Now, Aria provides us with some targeting protection and battle protection, but she doesn't really come up too often nowadays because people are all running kaijus and things like that. But Aria is still great against cards like Masterpiece because Masterpiece can't really attack over it at all, and Masterpiece's effect destroy things target. So really good wall to sit on for a while until you gather enough resources to outplay your opponent. Okay, so next card, we're actually playing 3 copies of Soprano, the Melodious Songstress. Now, this is the main card of your Melodious engine that we basically play. She allows you to go for your fusion plays like Shiberta, and she also, when she's special summoned, allows you to add a Melodious monster from your graveyard to your hand, so you can recover things like Aria or cards like the next card that we play, which is actually going to be 3 copies of Canon, the Melodious Diva. Now, Canon, if you control a Melodious monster on your side of the field, you can special summon her straight from your hand. You can only do this once per turn, which sucks, but she is a great facilitator for rank 4 plays and for fusion plays because she can easily swarm the field to allow Soprano to fuse, and she can easily swarm the field so you can go for additional rank 4 monsters, which is really, really nice. So that's it for the Melodious monsters. Pretty small engine, but it really, really is the core of the deck in terms of making consistent rank 4 plays. Now, in place of the 3 instant fusions, because I took them out after Norden got banned, I'm actually playing 3 copies of Lone Fire Blossom, which leads me into the next engine that we play, which is the Predaplant engine. Now, Lone Fire Blossom is used to get out Predaplant, Orifice, Scorpio, which we play 3 copies of. Now, Orifice Scorpio, if you don't know what it does, if it's normal special summon, you can discard 1 monster from your hand, and then special summon 1 Predaplant monster from your deck. This is really important because the card that you're going to be summoning out is going to be these 2 copies of Predaplant Darling Cobra. Now, Darling Cobra is absolutely amazing because it allows you to search any polymerization spell card or fusion spell card from your deck when it's special summoned by the effect of a Predaplant card, which is Orifice Scorpio. Now, I'll get into all the cards that I play that this can search, but it allows you to go for so many pluses and so many additional plays. And the reason I play 2 copies is because you never want to draw into it and then not have anything for Scorpio. Because we're investing 3 Lone Fires and 3 Scorpios into this Cobra, you do not want to draw that 1 Cobra and have so many dead cards in your deck afterwards. So you always want to play at least 2. I think 2 is the nice number to play. 1 is too little. It's like drawing into your Lapis or whatever for your Lazuli for your Brilliant Fusions. But since we're investing so much, we definitely want that Cobra to be in the deck so we can get that search. Okay, next off, we're actually playing 1 copy of Barrier Statue of the Heavens. I can't tell you how many games I've won with just this card. If you open kind of subpar and you go for a ritual summon with Saphra and you tribute Benten, you can easily search Barrier Statue of the Heavens, and it locks out so many decks right now. It is just so funny. It's easily sided out if you're going against a deck that special summons light monsters like Blue Eyes, but you know, going into game 1, it has such an edge on so many decks that it's worth it. And you can always bring it back because it's a light fairy type monster with Ritual Sanctuary and things like that. You can search it out with Benten, like I mentioned earlier. It's such a versatile card. It's so good. And of course, in conjunction with this, because it's so small on attack points, we play 1 copy of Honest. Now, Honest is really good. Not only because it protects the Barrier Statue of the Heavens, because you can loop it with cards like Saphra. So you'll always have an infinite way to get over big beat sticks, like if you're going up against Chaos Max or something that you normally can't get rid of unless you had things like Utopia Lightning. Honest does the job basically just as well. Okay, so we also, in this deck, we also play the Brilliant Fusion engine. So the main target is going to be Perform Mage Trick Clown, although you can send any of these light monsters above as well. And we, for our Gem Knight, we play 1 copy of Gem Knight Lazuli. You can play any Gem Knight that you want. It really doesn't matter now that Norden is gone. If Norden was here, if you played a level 4, you could always bring it back and then go for some rank 4 plays, but that is not the case right now, unfortunately. Okay, so next off, for another engine that we play, we actually play a Ritual engine in this, which allows us to speed through the deck, kind of draw cards, search cards out that we need. We play 2 copies of Saphra, Queen of Dragons, which allows us to get 1 of 3 effects. One during the turn that she's ritual summoned, or when a light monster is sent from either player's hand or deck to the graveyard that turn. So she allows us to either draw 2 cards and discard 1 card, which is really great for just getting advantage and drawing through our decks. She allows us to discard 1 random card from our opponent's hand, which is actually really nice if you're completely set up and you have nothing else that you could possibly want to draw into. You just discard a card from your opponent's hand, they start with 1 less card on their turn. And you could also add 1 light monster from your graveyard to your hand, which is really nice because we have cards like Honest. And you can even add things like Buried Statue of the Heavens if you want, back to your hand to normal summon again next turn. Okay, so to ritual summon your Saphira, the tribute fodder that we're using is 2 copies of Cyber Angel Benten. Now Benten, if she is tributed, you can add 1 light fairy type monster from your deck to your hand. Unfortunately, you can't just add any fairy type monster, or else you'd be able to search out things like Sophia, the goddess of rebirth, which this deck could potentially make, but I don't have enough room in the main deck to play her. Anyway. Next off, we're going to go into some hand traps. We play 1 copy of Maxi, because if you don't play Maxi, you're never going to draw into it. And because we have so much draw power in terms of Saphira, and we also play like Bujinte Tsukiyomi in the extra deck, the chance of drawing into this and having it in your hand for your opponent's turn is just absolutely amazingly high. Even for this deck, which is a 60-card deck, by the way. So yeah, the last monster in the lineup, and the last hand trap actually as well, is 3 copies of Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit. Too good not to have. And it's also important in this deck because it is a tuner, so it is really good. Saphira can also add it back from your graveyard to your hand because it is a light monster. So you have infinite reuses of Ghost Ogre and Honest if you play your cards correctly. So yeah, that does it for the monsters. Next off, we're going to go into the spell cards. Okay, so for the spell cards, starting off, we're playing 3 copies of Ritual Sanctuary. Now, Ritual Sanctuary is a core piece of the deck, so important in what it does. It basically ties together all the engines that this deck incorporates. So you can discard 1 spell card and add 1 light ritual monster or 1 ritual spell card from your deck to your hand. So this basically single-handedly allows you to set up for your ritual plays. Search out the Saphira, the Hymn of Light, the Benten for your searches. It is absolutely phenomenal in what it does. But the most important effect that this card has is that you can shuffle back spell cards from your graveyard into your deck, then target 1 light fairy type monster in your graveyard whose level is equal to the number of spell cards that you shuffle back, and then special summon it. So if you shuffle back 4 spell cards, you can special summon a Soprano from your graveyard, which allows you to add your cannon back, which allows you to go for fusions and XYZs. This is such a good facilitator for everything combo in this deck. But yeah, enough about that. Let's move on into the next card, which is Fusion Recycling Plant, another field spell that we run to add a little variety and as well as a little extra synergy into the deck. So we run Brilliant Fusion in this deck, and because Brilliant Fusion counts as a fusion summon, whatever you send from your deck to the graveyard, you can actually add back with Fusion Recycling Plant. Of course, you can add back the Lazuli or whatever Gem Knight that you sent, but you can also add back whatever light monster that you sent. So if you send Honest as a material for the Brilliant Fusion summon, you during the end phase, if you have this face up, you can add that Honest from your graveyard back to your hand. So this is actually something that's very important to note. You can search Ghost Ogre, you can search Honest, you can search your barrier statue, you can search a lot of different things, and I think this is a really underrated card in terms of its synergy with Brilliant Fusion, and now a lot of people realize that it has it. Of course, it has its effect where you can discard a card and add a polymerization from your deck or graveyard to your hand, which is kind of nice to set up for an additional fusion summon, but that recovery effect is just so good and does exactly what it needs to in this deck, which is help you loop resources and continuously generate advantage over time. Now, of course, we also play 3 copies of Terraform to search out these field spells that we just mentioned and gone over. Next off, for rituals, continuing on to that, we play 3 copies of Pre-Preparation of Rites, which allows us to add the Hymn of Light and the Saphira from our deck to our hand, which is really good. And we also have a Preparation of Rites. Preparation of Rites allows us to search our Benten. You can also search a Saphira if you already have a Benten in your hand, and also allows us to add the Hymn of Light from our graveyard back to our hand if we need to go for an additional ritual summon or things like that, just to help you get easy +1s. Both of these types of cards allow for easy +1s. Just play it and you get easy advantage. Okay, so of course, as we mentioned earlier, we play 2 copies of Hymn of Light. 2 is all you really need because we only play 2 Saphras. And of course, Hymn of Light can protect ritual monsters from getting destroyed by battle or by card effect by just banishing it in place of the destruction. Okay, so now here we're going to get into the fusion cards. Of course, Fusion Recycling Plant was a fusion card, but this is the bulk of the cards that you're allowed to search out with your Darling Cobra. So with your Darling Cobra, you can actually search out Brilliant Fusions, which is one of the most important cards in the deck. As I mentioned, it's synergy with so many cards. Brilliant Fusion allows us to summon our Seraphonite, which allows us to go for double normal summons. So definitely need 3 of these because you want to see it a lot. But of course, you can always search it out with your Predaplants. Another card that we can search is Future Fusion, which allows us to summon Shiberta straight from our extra deck without having any of the monsters that we need, any of the polymerizations or any additional spell cards or setup. You activate your Future Fusion. Your opponent's probably going to try to get rid of this as soon as possible, but if they don't, you get to set up your graveyard with Soprano and Cannon, and if this card lives on yet another turn, you get a free Shiberta on your side of the field. The most important part, though, is that it immediately gets your Soprano and Cannon out of your deck and into your graveyard, so your Ritual Sanctuary can start bringing them back and looping them. Of course, the monsters that you send don't need to stay in the graveyard for you to do the summon, so you can always bring them back and keep doing things with them, and then you can get a free Shiberta the following turn. Now, this is a card that I've been waiting so long for, and I finally got my hands on, is 1 copy of Ultra Polymerization. Now, Ultra Polymerization, if you don't know what it does, it's a pretty new card, and it says pay 2,000 life points. You can fusion summon 1 fusion monster from your extra deck using 2 monsters that you control as fusion materials. Neither player can activate cards or effects in response to this card's activation. And you can banish this card from your graveyard, then target 1 fusion monster that was fusion summoned with this card's effect, and then special summon the fusion materials used for its fusion summon from your graveyard, but change their attacks and defense to 0. And they also have their effects negated. So reading this, it's just a huge bulk of text, but what it essentially does is if you have, let's say you go for your Predaplants, you go for Scorpio and Cobra, and you search for the Ultra Polymerization. You can fuse both of those together for whatever you want. I prefer going for Predaplant Chimera Rafflesia because it's such a good card, and then you can banish this from your graveyard, targeting your Chimera Rafflesia, special summon back both your Predaplants, and then you can overlay them for a rank 3 monster. Of course, this works the same way if you have your Melodious monsters on the field. You can go for Soprano and Cannon. You could Ultra Polymerization, fuse those together for Shiberta, then banish this, target the Shiberta, and then summon back your Soprano and Cannon, and you can go for a rank 4 play. So this just basically puts 2 summons onto the field, and it's really, really good. Highly recommend playing it. You only need 1 copy though, because 1, the life point cost hurts, especially because we play things like Trick Clown and things already like that, which just burns us over and over every turn. But also because the fact that it's searchable, you don't really need to have multiple copies to draw into. 1 is enough. You only need to resolve 1, and you never really need any more than that. Okay, so moving on, the last fusion card that we play in this deck is actually going to be just the classic Polymerization. Now, of course, you can search this out with your Predaplants, although that's kind of a waste. The main reason it's here is so you can search it with Fusion Recycling Plant, and Fusion Recycling Plant allows you to just continuously recycle this from your graveyard, so you only need 1 copy in your deck to play. Okay, so for the rest of these spell cards, we're going to go into real quick. 1 copy of Emergency Teleport, so you can summon your Ghost Ogre from your deck and go for Synchro plays, because she is a level 3 tuner. 1 copy of Soul Charge, which is great for just recovering our boards, and also extending our plays if our opponent interrupts it, or if we just need extra materials on the field for combo pieces. We have 1 copy of Raigeki. Power cards are really good in this deck because you can always shuffle them back with Ritual Sanctuary. So you could use Raigeki multiple times in a single duel, which is really nice. So that is it for the monster clearing effects. We also have some spell and trap clearing effects. I switched back from Cosmic Cyclones to Mystical Space Typhoons just because I'm not really trying to focus on trying to kill true Drakers and things like that. And it seems like Zodiacs are still the dominant deck. It's tier 1, it's like about 50% of all the tops as of making this video. So yeah, this hitting things like Barrage, hitting General Back Row, and without the cost of 1,000 life points that Cosmic Cyclone brought with it. So this is still good. I don't really like playing Twin Twisters in this deck because you want to maintain your advantage, and because a lot of decks right now, they only activate 1 spell or 1 trap to go off. You know, Dragonic Diagram, your Zodiac Barrage, and things like that. The Mystical Space Typhoon is just enough. Okay, and of course, for the last spell card in this deck, we have to play 3 copies of Contract with Exodia, and I'll explain that in just a bit if you're a new viewer and you have no idea what this card is in here for. So yeah, that does it for the spell cards. A lot of spell cards. You want to see spell cards in your opening hand, definitely, because they're basically the core of the deck. Okay, so next off we're going to go into the trap cards. Starting off, we're playing 3 copies of Obliterate. Now this is why we play the Contract with Exodia, because Obliterate states that you can target 1 monster on the field, send 1 Forbidden 1 monster or 1 Exodia card from your hand or deck to the graveyard, and if you do, return that target to the hand. And of course, if this card is in the spell and trap zone, is sent to the graveyard, you can add 1 Forbidden 1 or 1 Exodia card in your graveyard back to your hand. And you can only use one of these effects per turn and only once that turn. So the thing with Obliterate is that you can continuously send Contracts with Exodia to the graveyard to bounce your opponent's monsters. You can of course bounce your own monsters as well if you need to make more room for additional summons, or if you have like used up monsters with no XYZ materials, you can return it to the extra deck, resummon it or something like that. But very, very useful card, because when Obliterate sends Contract with Exodia to the graveyard, you can actually shuffle those Contract with Exodias back into your deck with your Ritual Sanctuary. So not only does it fuel your monster reborns, but you're adding additional disruption to your opponent on top of that. And I love it so, so much. And of course, the other traps that we play 1 copy of Bottomless Trap Hole, because we actually play Trap Tricks with Fleazy in the extra deck, and the second target is a Treacherous Trap Hole. Bottomless is defensive, Treacherous is used more offensively. So yeah, that does it for the trap cards. Next off, we're going to go into the side deck. Okay, so for the side deck, starting off, we're playing 3 copies of DD Crow. Now, DD Crow is so versatile. It's kind of less so now that Paleozoics aren't really in the scene anymore, but against decks like Zodiacs, where you can disrupt their Dagusto Emeralds, against things like True Dracos, where you can banish the spells and traps, so Masterpiece has less materials to banish to pop your stuff on your side of the field. DD Crow is just such a good card. It disrupts a lot of recovery plays like Zodiac Combo, Dagusto Emerald, Zodiac Tiger Mortar. You can banish Rat Pierce from your opponent's graveyard, so they're just left with 1, and they can't really do much outside of that if they can't recover it. So there's a lot of possibilities with this card, and I still think it's pretty versatile. Next off, we're playing 3 copies of Flying Sea, because Zodiacs are just topping everywhere, so you're probably bound to run into one of these decks, especially now that it's starting to get cheaper to invest in. So yeah, Flying Sea basically acts as a dimensional barrier, but if your opponent goes first, you can basically summon this to their side of the field and stop their play if they don't have like a barrage or a Forbidden Chalice to negate it or anything like that. It's actually really devastating if you have a well-timed Flying Sea. For our last monster in the side deck, we play 1 copy of Artifact Lancia, because it is a light fairy type monster, and for the people that are still playing Infernoids or things like that that require banishing, you can always use your Artifact Lancia against them. It's also searchable by Benton, which is why I recommend playing it. You can of course add it back with Fusion Recycling Plant if you send it with Brilliant Fusion as one of the light targets that you send for Seraphinite. So there's some synergy there with the deck. It's really easy to use this in lockout decks like Invoked, Infernoids, and things like that. So pretty good overall. These spell cards in my side deck, I only play 2, and that's 2 Dark Holes. More power cards, always good. You can always shuffle these back, and if you're going second, chances are your opponent is probably going to have somewhat of an established field, so Dark Hole just allows you to clear everything out before you go make yours. Now, of course, this deck is a little more combo-oriented, so it is kind of fragile to disruption, so if you're getting rid of opponent's monsters on the field like Dryden and Crystal Wings and things like that, it is, well, of course, much easier for you to play your deck. So yeah, that's why I definitely recommend playing some more monster removal outside of just the Raigeki in your main deck. Next off, we're playing 1 copy of Trap Tricks Trap Hole Nightmare. This is to swap out with Bottomless Trap Hole if your opponent is playing a deck like Zodiacs, where they don't summon a lot of high attack monsters, but they do use a lot of their effects the turn they're summoned. So Trap Tricks Trap Hole Nightmare is actually really unexpected, because nobody really plays this card anymore, but I still believe it's a really good card, and that you can actually surprise your opponents with it. So yeah, definitely worth looking into. Next off, we're actually playing 2 copies of Mask of Restrict. This is really for the true Dracos and things like that. You don't really see it too often, but you can also block things like Kaijus from ruining your field. Your opponent can't tribute your stuff if Mask of Restrict is on the field, so that's alright. And of course, to top off the side deck, we're playing 3 copies of Starlight Road. This is to bring out the Stardust Dragon in our extra deck and to negate things like my opponent's Dark Holes, Raigekis, Twin Twisters. You want to keep your Ritual Sanctuaries up. You want to keep your Obliterates up. You want to keep your monsters protected. So Starlight Road is actually just a phenomenal card. It allows you to just negate things that will destroy anything on the field and gives you a free Stardust Dragon body on the field, which can, in addition to the Starlight Road negating things, Stardust Dragon can also negate additional effects. So it's just so good. Alright, that just that does it for this side deck. Next off, we're going to go into the extra deck. Okay, so for the extra deck, starting off, we're playing 1 copy of Super Quanto Mech Beast, Grand Pulse. Now, rest in peace, Super Quants. The deck is basically dead now with Norden gone as well on top of all their other hits. But Grand Pulse, though, is such a good rank 3 monster, and it allows you to destroy spell and trap cards that your opponent controls. So it's really good. And I like to make this when I have Predaplants on my field and I'm going first, because it has a 2,800 defense body, so it's so big, and your opponent really has to try to Castella or something to get rid of it. Almost nothing in this metagame has over 2,800 attack that can be conveniently summoned to attack over this. So your opponent then has to be very careful of what spells and traps that they set, because when it comes back to your turn, you're definitely going to start popping things. The other rank 3 monster I play is Levier the Sea Dragon. Levier doesn't come up as much as Grand Pulse, but it allows you to go for combo extensions, and also whatever you banish with Shiberta, you can actually bring back with Levier, so there's synergy there as well. Especially if your opponent, you can also utilize your opponent's banish zones, and since so many decks are starting to use their banish zones a lot more than they previously were, you can abuse that, grab your opponent's tuners or something like that from their banish zone, summon it to your side of the field, and go for synchro plays and things like that. Okay, so next off, we're actually playing 1 copy of Traptrix Rafflesia to utilize the Bottomless Trap Hole and the Treacherous Trap Hole in our main deck, as well as the Traptrix Trap Hole Nightmare in our side deck. I make this almost all the time when I'm going first. If I have 2 level 4s on the field and I don't really know what defensive card to make, first choice is going to be Rafflesia. Of course, depending on your matchup, you might also want to look into something like Abyss Dweller, which shuts down all graveyard effects from your opponent. So this allows you to shut down things like True King Dinosaurs, or anything that really utilizes the graveyard if people are still playing things like Burning Abyss, Phantom Knights, and things like that. One of my most favorite cards in this deck is actually going to be Daigusto Emerald. Daigusto Emerald allows us to shuffle back our monsters and get additional draws, which is always good. But the important thing is that you can actually bounce this back to your extra deck with your Obliterate when it runs out of materials, or to just protect it. And then you can summon it again and continuously recycle your monsters. And because Ritual Sanctuary is continuously recycling your spells, you basically have a deck that just functions infinitely. as long as your opponent doesn't deck out, the duel can drag out for quite a while, because this deck is kind of grindy. You'll set up a nice field, you try to prevent your opponent from playing. There's actually a lot of interaction between this deck and other decks, which is why I love playing this deck so much. But yeah, this allows us to basically increase our grind game and recycle important monsters, including things like hand traps like Max C. Okay, so next off, we're playing 1 copy of Bujinte Tsukiyomi. Now, Tsukiyomi allows us to draw cards. We have to discard our entire hand, which is fine, because you're normally going to set things and summon things until you only have 1 or 2 cards in your hand. Then you discard your entire hand, you can draw 2 new cards. This is really great for extending combos and for fixing dead hands, because we might run into those sometimes if we draw too many monsters or too many spell cards at once. Okay, next off, we play 1 copy of Castel, the Sky Blaster Musketeer, because general removal, almost all rank 4 decks play him because he's just so good. And this new addition to my extra deck that I absolutely love and I highly recommend you try out is going to be Tornado Dragon. It's so overlooked right now, but Tornado Dragon says, once per turn during either player's turn, you can detach 1 XYZ material from this card, then target 1 spell or trap card on the field and destroy it. So not only can you destroy something on your turn, but on your opponent's turn, if they activate Diagram, Barrage, or whatever, and you don't have an MST, you can always use Tornado Dragon's effect there. So it's just additional disruption, and right now with field spells being so prominent and so powerful, Tornado Dragon does a lot of work. So yeah, that does it for the XYZs. Next off, we're going to go into the Synchros. So for the Synchros, starting off, we play one copy of Ancient Fairy Dragon. Because we play so many field spells, Ritual Sanctuaries, and Fusion Recycling Plant, you can actually use Ancient Fairy Dragon to not only just gain the 1,000 life points, but also search out field spells of your own, recycle through your field spells, or because things like Dragonic Diagram and other field spells are so popular right now with True King Dinosaurs, True Dracos running around, Ancient Fairy Dragon can actually utilize your opponent's stuff and help you search out yours as well. Gains you life points back. 1,000 is really important because Trick Clowns are continuously burning you for 1,000, and Ultra Polymerization burns you for 2,000. Luckily, we don't have any instant fusions anymore, I guess, so that you save a few thousand life points there, but Ancient Fairy Dragon, definitely an important card. Next off, we're playing one Stardust Dragon. You can easily make the Stardust Dragon with a well, of course, bring it out with your Starlight Road, but also with your Ghost Ogre and your Seraphinite. If you have an E-Telly, you can E-Telly your Ghost Ogre out, Synchro Seraphinite for Stardust Dragon to protect your field. Also utilizes her so she, the 0 attack, 0 defense body is not just useless on your side of the field. And last but not least, we play one copy of Trishula, Dragon of the Ice Barrier. Now, Trishula is really good because you can summon it with your Predaplants. You can have Predaplant, Orphis, Scorpio, and Darling Cobra on your field, and you can E-Telly into a Ghost Ogre, and that's one way to summon it. There's more ways that you could do it, but I'm not going to get into that now. I don't want to drag this video on. But yeah, that does it for the Synchros. Next off, we're going to go into the Fusions. Starting off, we play one copy of Gem Knight Seraphinite, which requires one Gem Knight and one Light Monster. The Light Monster is obviously satisfied by like our entire deck, which is basically composed of Light Monsters only, except for like the Predaplants, but they're there to help. So yeah, so Seraphinite is absolutely amazing, and of course is the target for Brilliant Fusion. Next off, we play two copies of Shiberta, the Melodious Maestra, and Shiberta, you can summon her with Soprano. You can summon her with Polymerization too, which is actually kind of funny. Oh, one thing I forgot to mention is you can actually summon Seraphinite using Polymerization. If you draw into your Lazuli or whatever Geminite that you play, you can go for a Search of Polymerization, you can go infuse for the Seraphinite, so you can still get your double normal summons, so you can still use that Lazuli in your hand, so she's not that dead. It just requires a lot more resources to do, and it's not optimal, but it is a possibility. But yeah, going back to Shiberta, you can also fuse her with Polymerization, because we do run Fusion Recycling Plant to search out the Polymerization. But Shiberta, normally summoning it with Soprano and Cannon on the field, really good card. Highly recommend it. I do not play Bloom Diva in this build because Bloom Diva doesn't really come up too often, especially with so many decks running True Dracos now, and they're Tribute Summoned or Normal Summon monsters, so yeah, Bloom Diva can't really do much against them. And I definitely prefer the second Shiberta because she can get up to 3,000 attack and start destroying things like Masterpiece and things like that, so your opponent can't really, attack over her. Last but not least, the last card, the new addition to my extra deck as well, is going to be Predaplant Chimera Rafflesia, because of course, if you have a Scorpio and a Cobra on your side of the field, and you search out an Ultra Polymerization, you can Ultra Polymerization into a Chimera Rafflesia, then bring back your Scorpio and your Cobra, overlay them to rank 3, and go from there. This card is actually really good. So if you don't know what it does, it says once per turn you can target one monster on the field with a level less than or equal to this card's, and then banish it. And when an attack is declared involving this card and opponent's face-up monster, you can activate this effect. Until the end of this turn, the opponent's monster loses 1,000 attack, and if it does, this card gains 1,000 attack. And then once per turn, during the next standby phase after this card was sent to the graveyard, you can add one Polymerization spell card or one Fusion spell card from your deck to your hand. So if your opponent gets rid of this and destroys it, you get a search next turn for really powerful cards like Brilliant Fusion, Future Fusion, and things like that. But the thing is, if they don't destroy it and leave it on the field, you can start destroying your opponent's stuff. This goes up to 3,500 attack if it attacks your opponent's stuff. And you can, it's basically like a BLS as well, although with a bit of a restriction on it. It has to be a monster with a level, so it can't banish XYZs, but as long as the monster's level is 7 or lower, you can banish it, so it's really good. Right, so yeah, that does it for the extra deck, and that does it for the deck profile. So thank you all so much for watching this video. I really do appreciate it. If you enjoyed it or found it helpful, please leave a like, subscribe for more Melodious content, and leave a comment down below letting me know what I can do to improve. And until next time, take care.